set up where I had the sheriffs come out, because I made sure my neighbors complained, and my neighbors were quite a ways off. But when the sheriffs came out, I was more or less setting up an ambush for them. And I had a semi-automatic rifle. And my plan was not to, I wanted to make sure that their response would be to not to capture me, but to make sure that to stop me, what you call suicide by cop. And somewhere in the beginning of that, where it was time for me to pull the trigger, I didn't.
I'd lived here about a year, and we had, my wife and son and I had met up with my family for a reunion, and Stan's sister approached me and said, "I understand you live in Montrose." "Yes." "Did you know that was where my brother killed himself?" And I didn't know. I had no idea about that. The location. I just knew he had died by his hand in Colorado. And it was interesting because the Black Canyon's always been kind of an ominous place to me. I love going there and enjoy it, but it's always had this kind of dark spirit to it. And when she shared that with me, it was easy to kind of make that connection. I mean, whether that's a real connection or not, who knows, but it's since then it struck me as it's a very sobering place for me to go.
I remember very deeply sitting in my room, and I actually set my alarm clock to wake up at a certain time, and I had a bottle of fingernail polish remover, and I was just sure that that was going to end the pain. And that was my first time that I've experienced actually wanting to, that's all I could think about was getting rid of the pain, just having it be gone. It was scary. Mom and Dad didn't know about it. No one knew about it until my stomach hurt really, really bad. I only drank about a quarter of the bottle before I realized that maybe that was not the right choice. So that was my first lived experience with a suicide attempt. And then recently, about 7 years ago, I lived through another attempt where I decided that, again, to end the pain, just to get it over with, to take a bunch of sleeping pills. And unfortunately, that did not, at the time I was thinking, unfortunately, that did not work. I ended up in a hospital, and very mad, actually. I remember being mad that I woke up and that I would have to go through the day.
Growing up in Montrose was a great experience. I love this community, but certainly there were instances of suicide throughout my life. As early as when I was in middle school, I had a peer that completed suicide actually at school. I have memories growing up here of there really not being a lot of follow-up or discussion around when people in my family knew that this would be impacting them, that it just seemed to be sort of a mystery.
I've been a police officer for about 41 years. Throughout my career, there's been several instances where myself as a police officer and fellow police officers have responded to suicidal events within our community. A lot of them range from children that are 13 years old to adult couples that are in their 85-year range. Handles several of them as far as the suicide goes, but a lot of the instances that we've gone to is causes a lot of grief to the police officers that respond. It's devastating to the family. A lot of people do not understand why suicide happens. Even police officers a lot of times do not understand why. We've had instances where we have lost police officers to suicide. I think it goes everywhere. It's not just, to certain people or certain people that are fighting depression, but it's throughout the community, throughout the ages, and it's just a very big thing that goes on.
Bullying, it's definitely in the schools for sure. It's even more now on social media. A lot of people are keyboard warriors nowadays. They like to say things when they can hide behind their phone or their computer. They're not face to face. They're, it's easy to say something on social media when somebody else isn't looking at you. I don't think kids are held accountable enough for it. Like I said, I couldn't tell you one time hearing it, seeing it, even reading about it, one person ever getting in trouble, serious trouble for bullying or picking on somebody.
Because I believe we live in this rural frontier culture that a strength of it is the pull yourself up by the bootstraps, cowboy up spirit of our community. And don't get me wrong, I would not trade 1 ounce of that. The reason this area has thrived and has come to even be here today for us to live in is because of the pioneer spirit that has come before us. And at the core of that pioneer spirit is, I can do this on my own. And while in our community there's a lot of collaboration, great spirit of collaboration throughout Montrose, underlying all that is still the pioneer spirit of I can do this on my own. And I think that when you couple that spirit with how easy it is for individuals to come to the Western Slope, live off the grid, which is to say, be alone. And what I've seen professionally is loneliness is one of those things that can creep up on you and really surprise you. You think you're connected, then all of a sudden you find that you're not. And at times not know what your next move is to create connections. And if you're not prepared for that, and I believe a lot of us aren't, we can start going down a path where desperate measures we might not have considered before become real opportunities.
Police officers are supposed to be tough and can carry a lot of stuff on their shoulders, but when it comes to that type of stuff, we try to talk to each other and try to keep our camaraderie going and rely on each other. But a lot of times it's very paramount that a professional comes in and sits down. And I can remember when Karen Ickes came in and talked to me, and it was a burden off my shoulders when she came in and interviewed me and talked to me and let me talk to her about what was going on in regards to suicide. So it does help immensely.
Montrose, Colorado, the county has 6 to 12 suicides a year. We already have 10 so far this year. And that's hard on an individual, particularly dealing with the families and having to explain why we need to do the investigation and the results of the investigation. As the coroner, I'm required by statute to respond to the death scenes and investigate those deaths to confirm that a suicide in fact has occurred. And I also am responsible for telling the next of kin that they've lost a loved one. Those are very traumatic experiences. It's very difficult to go and see the disasters of people who have decided to kill themselves.
A lot of people want to sweep topics or categories that they don't feel comfortable about talking. They want to sweep it under the rug or push it aside and act like it's not there, but it needs to be addressed. Suicide and many other things need to be addressed. I think that's the only way that you can ultimately limit what happens and be able to somewhat control the environment around you, is if you have the knowledge about it. You've got to know what it's about. You have to know, be able to recognize maybe if somebody else is experiencing, depression or maybe leading down that road. You have to be able to recognize that to help somebody. And I think there's definitely not enough knowledge out there, at least in my experiences growing up, in a small town. I don't think it's talked up enough at all. If somebody watches this video or watches a different video tonight and it changes their outlook and they share it on social media or they talk to a family member about it and it just keeps going and going, eventually that knowledge will get out there where it's common knowledge, and I think there's no better time to start than now if you haven't already.
The reason I'm here is I'm in a stage of life where I'm like going on 70 years old. I've experienced, I've lived, and if I have something to share with somebody who's going to be watching this, I hope it helps one person. And maybe this type of interviews, and if you can get it out there to the enough people, and maybe they'll think twice about, well, do I really have it that bad? I need to check out.
I think sometimes there's this notion of, it's in the works, and I think can be a frightful topic, so people avoid it. But I think we should talk about it, and we should ask the hard questions about what is going on. And we have some trends in our community that set us apart in a negative way. What is going on among our young people? What is going on around our middle-aged men, that we have these numbers? And it doesn't discriminate. I mean, there's all walks of life, but it is affecting our community. And so we do and we should talk about it and ask those hard questions of, as a community, whether it's a system of education, whether it's a family organization, how are our institutions functioning, and are we missing something here? Are we missing something in terms of meeting the needs of whether it's our young people or our family members or our vets? Is there something that we can do to create a sense of interconnectedness, to meet some of those basic human needs that maybe intercept that pathway? Suicide doesn't just happen overnight. I don't think it's an impulsive decision. I think sometimes it's misunderstood that it's just an impulsive thing, but I think people spend quite a bit of time really contemplating their worth, contemplating their desire to live, contemplating what's worth living for and what's worth dying for. I mean, I think at the heart of it, we're talking about life and death. And so I think the irony about suicide, what maybe people don't know, is that when people have a sense of what's worth dying for, what's passionate for them, what's purposeful for them, that makes life worth living. And I think sometimes in the busyness of our culture, we don't go to those deeper, soulful conversations. But that's the question. Is your life worth living? And are there things that you value enough to die for? Isn't that a paradox?
I think people don't realize how much pain and suffering really go on, and that the majority of people that I see, this isn't a snap decision. They didn't decide this one night. These people have been suffering and in a lot of emotional and or physical pain for a long time, and they have fought a good fight. Almost all of them, even the younger folks. When I have met with 13-year-olds that are I had a 13-year-old girl tell me that her soul is depleted. And I think I took that one really to heart. They don't really want their lives to end. They want to end pain and suffering. They have a lot of pain, whether it be mental, physical. And if you ask people, do you really want to die or do you want your life to be different? Most people, and I'm going to say like 98% of the people really just want their lives to be different, better, where it doesn't hurt so much for them.
When I'm talking to others, whether they're someone that is the individual that's dealing with suicidal ideation, or they're much beyond ideation, they're really in the planning and they're on the verge of attempting, or if I'm talking to a loved one of someone that's in the throes of that, and I don't know whether this is right or wrong. I just know that I've seen this work. And I know ultimately the friend that was responsible for really impacting me was, he just took action. He took the night like taking the bull by the horns, and didn't allow me to go down the path I was going. Never asked me anything. He just took control of the night and made sure I was okay. And that's certainly one thing that can happen, but I think the more simpler thing really is asking the person, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Are you thinking about killing yourself? And there's some debate on should you ask one or the other, and I'll tell you, I ask both, because I don't know where the person's thinking and how they're differentiating on that. But for me, it's really, I'd encourage folks, if you're concerned about somebody, point blank ask them. It's a tough question to ask. I don't discount that, but that's what I would hope that someone would do for me, and it's what I would do for others.
I think the biggest thing we can do is open up the dialogue, which I feel like this film is about. This is about opening up the dialogue so that we can talk to each other about suicide and our suicidal feelings. Something happened today. I feel like I'd like to die. I want to be able to talk about that. And I'd like someone who's going to give me an open-ended, so what wants to die? What in you wants to die? Because life is going to be challenging. Who's fooled by that life won't be challenging, right? And there's going to be a time when we're going to want there to be that person sitting over there saying, so tell me, what wants to die? Tell me. I really want to know. I want to listen. And I think that kind of openness and honesty could do a lot towards, I don't know about bringing it to zero, but at least bringing the numbers down, possibly.